So through my work with the utility network, I have identified some key stages and structured the presentation accordingly. So the first main stage is planning. What data do I have and how will that data fit into the new schema? What level of detail am I looking for? In other words, how closely do I want to model the real world? The next stage is migrating your data into the new schema. And after that, you're going to go through the process of actually creating the utility network, and then you'll implement it by branch versioning your data, enabling topology, and publishing your utility network service to your portal. Due to time constraints, we won't be able to get into working with the utility network. So that would be things like setting up associations, running traces, and creating diagrams. So just a quick introduction. What is the utility network? It's a framework for real-world modeling of various utility systems like gas and electric, water, wastewater, and storm sewer. So this presentation is focusing on the utility network in an enterprise environment using an enterprise geodatabase and giving examples that reference the sanitary foundation. Getting started. Before we talk about planning for the utility network, there are some necessary items to address. So one of the first issues we had deploying our first utility network had to do with compatibility. So starting at Pro 2.7, the version of Pro and Enterprise determine the utility network version. So in our case, we were on version 10.8.1 for Enterprise, but we had Arc Pro 2.9 installed. And then we started to receive errors when we were working with the utility network. So if you have Enterprise 10.8.1 installed, then you will have to use Pro 2.6, which will place you in an older version of the utility network. This is important to note because in our planning phase, we decided to go ahead with implementing the utility network version 4. And when we upgraded to 10.9.1, we had to migrate to a new asset package, which had major changes. So we'll have more on that later. So you can certainly create a utility network from scratch, but using Esri's asset package will help move you more quickly into the utility network. The asset package is a file geodatabase with the utility network schema and all the necessary tables needed to create the utility network. So the asset package is available to you when you download one of the utility network foundations from the ArcGIS Solutions app. If you are on an older version of Enterprise and you decide you really want to deploy the utility network before you upgrade, you're going to need to deploy that solution from ArcPro. Just keep in mind that the older solution is depreciated in the utility network. So in the foundation solution, you will get an ArcPro project, which we'll use to publish your utility network service, an asset package with sample Naperville data, a sample utility network, and a data dictionary, which will become your new best friend. We'll take a look at that briefly in the planning stage. So before you get too far into your utility network project, you should download a couple ArcGIS Pro packages. And before you can download those packages, you must be in a cloned Python environment. So to do this, you're going to want to go to your menu in Pro, select Python, and then click Manage Environments. After that, you'll click Clone Default. You're going to need to restart Pro after this. Once Pro is back up, you're going to go back into Python and you're going to click on Add Packages. You may need to click the refresh arrow first, and you're going to download DLT Solutions, which is going to aid you in migrating your data, and the UN tools, which will contain the geoprocessing tools for staging the utility network and applying the asset package. So now we're ready to talk about planning your utility network. The first step in planning is understanding the data model so you can determine how your existing data will fit. The utility network consists of a domain network, a structure network, and geodatabase objects or non-spatial objects. The structure network models structural features that are associated with the domain network. Structures are containers. Resources don't flow through them. An example would be manholes. In the geometric network, manholes are connected to mains. In the sanitary utility network, manholes contain manhole channels, which are connected to the mains. The domain network models network features that represent the utility's assets. So resources do flow through these features. So some examples would be pumps, mains, valves, and cleanouts. Next, we're going to go down to tier groups. Tier groups organize the network into sectors, like transmission and distribution in the case of water, or cathodic protection coverage and sewer collection in the case of sanitary. When we deployed this solution, we didn't get too much into cathodic protection. It does have to deal with corrosion control for metal. Again, we didn't really do much with cathodic protection. Next down, we have the tiers, and the tiers are going to model the hierarchy of how the network delivers those resources. So again, using the sanitary network as an example, there are 3 tiers. There's the cathodic protection, which belongs obviously to the cathodic protection coverage tier group, and has a tier rank of 1. It's the only member that exists in that group. Then there's the sewer collection system with a tier rank of 1, and sewer sheds with a tier rank of 2, and those both belong to the sewer collection tier group. Next, we have subnetworks, which represent a topological subpart within a tier where all the features are defined by one or more subnetwork controllers. Each of the utility networks, water, sewer, gas, have a list of acceptable network subnetwork controllers. You can modify this, but you should have a very good reason to do so. In sanitary network, with respect to the sewer collection system tier, the treatment plant is the subnetwork controller. To create a subnetwork, you would select the treatment plant as the subnetwork controller, give it a name, and name the subnetwork. All this is done after the utility network is created and unfortunately not covered in this webinar. So the next level in the utility network is the feature classes, which contain the features of both the structure and the domain networks. And finally, asset groups and asset types, which define the features in more detail within the feature classes. So let's go over the layers or feature classes in the utility network. In the domain network, we have devices, assemblies, junctions, and lines. And in the structure network, we have structure junctions, structure lines, and structure boundaries. Within those layers, we have various asset groups and asset types. So we're going to take a quick look at the sanitary data dictionary for some examples. So this is the sanitary data dictionary. We don't have a ton of time to go too in depth, but you're going to want to familiarize yourself with this. So we'll go right into the layers. Actually, I'm going to close that out right here. So these are the layers that we just saw. So sewer device, assembly, and junction. And we're going to go ahead and these are all clickable. So we're going to go into the sewer device. And so once you're in here, you can see, and you'll see these interchange subtypes and asset groups. Those are the same things. So if you expand the subtype group, you can see what subtypes are considered sewer devices. So all of this is going to help you in planning how your data is going to fit into the new model. So in here we have pumps and flow valves and controllable valves. So you can go ahead, well, let's click on flow valve. So then that opens up another tab here. And we can see that we have asset types. We also have a nice description here. We have our codes, which are going to be important to note. So if we expand asset types, we can see that we have air gap, altitude, check valves, and it gives a description of what those are. So we can go ahead and further drill down here on the air gap valve, and we can see that it has a single terminal configuration. We can see the rules that govern how resources flow. So we have junction, containment, and we can take a look at all of those. So very important for migration of your data, just to know how everything fits together. So we also we can look at the fields, which is really nice. So we can see all the different fields that are going to be in this layer. We can click down and take a look at some of the different domains, see those in here. And then attribute rules. So there aren't any in this one, but any associated attribute rules. So again, make the data dictionary your best friend. So let's take a look at some planning tips. So It's a good idea to explore the Naperville utility network and asset package data. It's going to give you a feel for the structure of the utility network and hopefully help guide you in the right direction. You may also want to use a spreadsheet to list out your current feature classes with the new corresponding asset groups and asset types. This is going to let you know what you have, where you need to go, and keep everything organized. Help migration go smoother. So last, you're going to want to document any changes you plan to make to the asset package. This is super important. You will need to reference this in the future when you migrate to new asset packages. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I've got some resource links in there about how the releases of the different asset packages and what it takes to get to those. But you will need to know what you've done in previous asset packages going forward. So I would say out of all these stages, the planning stage is what took us the most time. The other stages can definitely become problematic with various errors, but those are generally mitigated with good planning and documentation. So now on to the data migration. So the first thing you're going to want to do is run the change asset package spatial reference tool. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a new geodatabase that models the asset package schema. So now you'll have a blank asset package ready for your data. One step that's going to help the migration process go more smoothly is if you add the fields asset group, which is a long integer, and asset type, a short integer, to your existing feature classes and populate those fields with the codes from the data dictionary that we just saw. So you will also want to add any fields from your existing data that aren't in the utility network layers. So one thing to keep in mind is that these layers contain many individual feature classes from your existing data, and adding many additional fields that are only relevant to, let's say, pumps, but not to valves or cleanouts, will mean that you'll have to do some cleanup work in field maps with conditional visibility so that your field workers aren't overwhelmed with unnecessary fields. So it could be a better idea to maybe create related tables if you're going to have a ton of extra fields, or decide what's absolutely necessary. Also, it's very important that you do not delete or change existing fields. At this time, you're also going to want to add any new domains or add to existing domains. And finally, adding any additional asset types, but making sure not to delete or modify the existing asset types. So next, we're going to see a demo on migration using the data loading tools from the package that you've already installed. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. So we're going to use the Create Data Loading Workspace. So in here, we're doing the source to target mapping. So the source is going to be your existing data, and the target is going to be the asset package layers. So we're just going to do a couple examples of pumps and system valves in here. Your red X will go away when you've got the target filled in. So we want to check the box for field name similarity, and then we're going to go ahead and navigate to where we want to the workspace to be stored. So you can certainly do as many as you want. You can do the whole thing in one workspace if you wanted to. I decided to go by asset package layers. So I did one workspace for devices, one workspace for lines, one workspace for junctions, etc. So I'm going to pause the video here. So when you save this, it's going to name it data loading workspace. That's just what they come out. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and rename that. So I did that down here, devices demo, junctions demo, however you want to do it. When you open up this folder, you're going to have an Excel spreadsheet, and you're going to use that Excel spreadsheet for mapping your data that you're going to migrate. So we'll look here, we'll open the data loading workspace. There's our Excel spreadsheet. So we'll let that play a little longer. So the important field here is going to be column E. So these are going to be the feature classes that you just that you just used in the last tool. So here we see that we have pumps going to the device, and we have system valves also going to the device. Column F, enabled true. This just means that when you execute the data load, that both of these are going to go into the device feature class. If you turn that to false, then only one of them would. And that could be useful if, let's say, you had, 5 or 6 of these, you data loaded them, there was an issue with one of them, maybe you had to come back in here, fix that issue, and you only wanted to then to load that particular feature class. So we'll continue to play and we'll go into the system valves. Okay, so if you're just going to do a basic field map, you're going to want to use this expression field. So in the last tool, we checked the box for field mapping or for field name recognition. It sometimes works, but it's not always perfect. So you may need to come in here, click into the field and map them yourselves. So there's a lot of blank values here. You're not going to have these. These are new utility network fields. So don't expect that you would have anything to map those to. So we'll take a look at that. You can click right in the field and choose your field name there. So one thing that you might be wondering too is, maybe you have text fields and those text fields have text domains, and those domains need to now be mapped into numeric fields with numeric domains. The utility network uses predominantly numeric domains. So in my example here, I have the asset owner and asset manager. And in my existing data, those are both text fields with text domains. And then in my asset package, those are numeric fields. So what you can do is you might be thinking, do I have to create, the new numeric fields and then do this calculation? And the answer is no, you can use lookups. So if you're going to use a lookup, you are not going to fill out the expression field here. You are going to put in the name of your domain. And I should probably mention that down here, we're in the mapping worksheet, and then we have target schema, target subtypes, and then the blue values, those are all your existing domains. So you're going to put in your existing domain for the asset owner in the lookup sheet and the lookup key, and then the lookup value is a name that you designate. So I decided to call it new_owner. So we'll take a look at that, and we're going to just scroll over to the asset owner. I'm going to pause that. So when you very first come in here, C and D aren't here, just A and B are. And you can see the code is a text code. So what you do is you put your new_owner here in a description field, and these are the values that I have in my asset package. So I'm going to go ahead and map those, and I'm going to do the same thing for my asset manager. And important, make sure you save your Excel spreadsheets. So next, we're going to execute the data load, and that's simply using that tool and then navigating to your newly saved Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't take too long to run. So one thing that's really important here is to make sure you check your data. Don't assume that it all went in there correctly. Go back through, make sure all the fields transferred over that you wanted. It's just really important, because that data migration, that when you apply your asset package, that's where you can kind of get into some trouble if your data migration didn't go smoothly. So here we're just going to take a look at the attribute table, see if our values came over. We're going to go ahead and filter this. So we did import pumps and system valves, and our system valves were the ones we want to look at. Those had the text values. So we're just going to take a look at that. We're going to filter by the asset group. Is controllable valve. We know that from our handy data dictionary. So as you can see, as we scroll down, I'm going to pause this a second. If you left the value blank, which you did on a lot of these, because this is your first time implementing it, so they're going to come through as unknown, or in this case, it's going to be false. Those are the default values. But as we start to scroll over, we're going to see some of the stuff that some of the field values that we designated, like present status and diameter. And then importantly, here's our owned by and maintained by. There's our city values, everything, our text field went over to our numeric field nicely. So, okay. So now that we've migrated our data, it's time to create our utility network. So one important thing to note is that you are going to need to create a database user specifically for the utility network with read-write permissions. Next, you'll create your enterprise geodatabase unless you're using an existing database. I will mention that there are a lot of domains that come with each utility network, and it can get messy if you create your utility network in an existing database. I decided to create a separate database for the sanitary network, but that's an individual decision. After you have your enterprise geodatabase and the new utility network database user, you're going to make a connection to the database with that user. The utility network data set has to be created with that designated user. Also, just make sure that your database is registered with the ArcGIS server. So we're going to stage the utility network next. So one other important thing to note here is before you do this, you're going to want to make sure that you're logged into Pro as the utility network owner with the utility network license. This is the time to do that if you weren't already logged in. And also before we stage the utility network, we're going to need to create a service territory boundary using the feature class in your asset package. So this boundary will cover the area served by your utility system. It is virtually impossible to alter this once the network is created, unfortunately. So you're going to want to make sure that your boundary is large enough to cover future growth and expansion. So when you run the tool, you will input your enterprise geodatabase for the input geodatabase parameter and your newly created service territory boundary for the service territory feature class. The feature dataset name and the utility network name are names that you choose. So once you've staged the network, you're going to see a new utility network data set with layers related to the structure network only. So the domain network feature classes, those will be added after you run the apply asset package tool. So next you're ready to apply the asset package using the apply asset package geoprocessing tool located in the utility network package tools. For the asset package parameter, you're going to navigate to your asset package. Make sure that the structure and sewer networks are checked. And then you're going to go for the input utility network, you're going to navigate to your data set and select your network and make sure that load data and calculate spatial index and analyze are checked. So just some notes. Many of the administrative functions for the utility network will require topology to be disabled. So that would include basically any rules, connectivity, subnetwork controller definitions, all those will require that topology is disabled. You cannot change the utility network database owner without having to recreate the data. However, you can change the utility network portal owner by using the update portal dataset owner geoprocessing tool. So one important thing to note, updating the utility network to the latest version using the upgrade dataset tool only updates the schema for the feature classes and geodatabase objects. This will not actually move you to a new asset package. To move to a new asset package, you will need to export your utility network out as an asset package and proceed to migrate the data into a new asset package. So I mentioned that because I don't know why, but I didn't realize that when we deployed our utility network and we upgraded to 10.9.1 and there was a new asset package. And I don't know why I thought that when I just ran that tool, that I would have that new schema. And unfortunately, it is quite a process to migrate your data into that new asset package. So in the references section that I've included at the end, I've included a link to the management release schedule, and that's going to explain all about the new asset package releases and the tentative schedules there. There's also a link to the change log, so that's going to be very important when you're migrating to new asset packages, is seeing what has changed. So lastly, we are going to implement the utility network, and that's going to consist of making sure we have global IDs, editor tracking enabled, branch versioning. We're going to be repointing data sources, enabling topology, and then publishing a utility network service to the portal. So we're going to watch a quick demonstration here. We'll play this. So before I begin, I mentioned that Pro project that's included in the solution. So two of the main maps are the sewer utility network map, and this is the one that you're going to use to actually publish your service. The other one is the sanitary utility network editor, and so that's organized into subtypes for you. It's a really nice, nice format there, and those are going to be hooked up to your new service. So when you very first come in here, you're going to notice this big purple here, and that's because your topology is disabled at the time. So yeah, we're going to want to come in and we're going to go in, we're going to have a bunch of red exclamation points here, and we're just going to go in and we're going to set that data source and point it to our new utility network. I have had instances where I've had to re-add in the network, so just be aware there. Also, it's important that we have the validation layers in the map and these sewer objects, junction objects. If those are missing, you are going to receive an error when you go to analyze your network. We're also going to want to check and make sure, as I mentioned before, that we have editor tracking enabled, global IDs. When we go to branch version, that we're going to do that at the database level. So we're going to go ahead and right click on the database, and we're going to go to geodatabase connection properties. And here, right now I have it at branch versioning, but typically traditional versioning is going to be the one that's highlighted here, and you'll switch it over to branch versioning. And once you do that, you should be ready to actually branch version your data set. So you'll do that by going into manage. And again, I just clicked on that. Whoops. Sorry, everyone, if you're not really careful here. We'll head back over. Okay. Nope, backing up just a little bit. There we go. So you'll click manage. This versioning box should be unchecked. So, and this is also where you can check and see if you have global IDs and editor tracking enabled. So you can see I've got everything checked. It's branch versioned. I should be good to go. So next we got to get rid of this purple background by enabling our topology. So we're going to go into the utility network tools in that administration. I am going to just kind of remind you when I mentioned some of those functions under that administration toolbox. See if I can go back just a little bit here. Yeah, so this is a good thing to know. So topology, in order to do a lot of these functions here, your topology is going to have to be disabled, and you're going to want to do it on the database. So you're not going to want to be in your service doing anything. You're going to want to come back to this map, and if you're going to add, a rule, add a tier group, any of those things, import rules, you're going to want to disable your topology for that. So just a quick thing to note. So, and then this is where you're going to find your enable and disable topology. So we're going to enable that. It's a fairly quick process. I like to always navigate to the database. I want to make sure that I'm going into the database and grabbing that network. Just no mistake in that. Once you've created your service, it can be kind of confusing sometimes, and you never want to disable the topology on the service itself. So now we are good to go. We can go ahead and publish our service to portal. So we're going to give it a name. We're going to want to enable feature access. Go ahead and put it in a portal folder if you'd like, in a server folder. So we're going to go to configuration and we're going to want to check version management and validation to take advantage of those capabilities. We'll go in edit feature access. I like to check the apply default features with Z values and geometry updates. This is really important I'm going to pause this right here because this max number of coded domains should be upped per Esri documentation. So you can throw it at a value of like 200,000 or something like that. So I'm going to change that here, and you're going to want to make sure that you select a time zone of UTC for that. Also go to the next tab and make sure you have your dedicated instances. You can move those up and down depending on your organization's needs. So when I'm going to pause this right here. So this is going to be an expected warning. So this is warning you because you have these validation layers in here, and that's perfectly normal. Expect it. You're not going to get rid of that. So now that we have our service, we're going to go over to this sanitary editor tab, and we're going to go ahead and I love the way that this is set up. So it's set up in the subtypes for you. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to publish something like this and have this functionality within the web maps, but it's great to use for editing if you're going to edit in Pro. And so you're going to go ahead and you're going to have a bunch of red exclamation points, and you're going to need to navigate over to your newly created service in order to repair those sources. So we're setting our data source. We're going to go into our portal content. There's our sanitary utility network we just did, and we're going to go ahead and hook that up right there. So unfortunately, due to time, we're not going to be able to go over. This is your utility network toolbar up here, and there's various things that you can do. Terminal connections, tracing, various traces you can do. We have diagrams, modifying, adding subnetwork controllers. That will have to be for a different webinar. But we are going to go into looking at validating our topology here. So once you're in, and this is stuff, so you're going to want to make sure you do most of the things that you're going to do in working with that are going to be working with the service here. So you're going to validate the topology. You're going to want to be in the editor, which is hooked up to your service, your newly created service, not the database. Important distinction. So I don't have any dirty areas. You are likely going to have quite a few. And just one more thing I wanted to point out is that if you go and you right click on your network, if you're ever wondering, how do I look at my properties, you can right click on your actual network for whatever utility you're working with, and you can see, your topology status. You can see all the rules. A lot of the things when you first come in, you're likely going to have a lot of errors that are resulting from rule errors. So, the Esri does the best they can with coming up with all the various rules based on standards that they've collected over the years. In our example, so we had a lot of like, for example, a gravity main connecting to a clean out. That was not a rule that was in there according to standards. That isn't something, I guess, that happens very often. So you have to make a decision when you look at these errors. Do I modify that by, changing whether that, changing that asset or that clean out type, or do I add a rule? So you can absolutely add a rule that works for your organization. All things to keep in mind there. So yeah, that's all I have. So thank you very much for attending the webinar. Really appreciate your time. Here are some resources that I believe Bill is going to be able to include in the email. So this asset change package, this is great for having basically anything as you go to these new asset packages, anything that that you have that's different, you're going to want to see that. There's the compatibility matrix, a migrating data into the utility network video, and the management release plan.